Hi, are you currently reading about any of the drama that's off the back of this movie? It ends with us and the stars and director Justin Baldoni and the actress Blake Lively who played the main character. It's been a fascinating thing, and you might wonder why I kind of feel pulled to talk about it, but I just feel like it exposes so many of the things that are going on today in society and the confusion between masculine and feminine roles and boundaries and taking things at face value and believing stories. The Me Too movement, absolutely everything is involved with it. So I've found myself spending entirely too much time just looking at the things and just like really analysing what might be going on or what it draws attention to. So if you're not too familiar with it, if you're not into your Hollywood gossip, it's not your thing. Basically, this guy, Justin Baldoni, mostly known for being a television actor, I think it would be fair to say, but having done well and set up his own production company, bought the rights to this book, It Ends With Us, this romantic novel that's also heavily about domestic violence. And he, being somebody that classifies himself as a feminist and does his best to not live with toxic masculine traits, if you like, has a podcast and so on about the topic called, I think it's called Man Enough. Um, his angle on it was to really do this movie from a female gaze, is how he puts it. It's a lovely phrase that from he was so obsessed with doing it from this female gaze that I think kind of maybe part of the problem was he forgot how to be a man. I know that sounds mean or awful, but I think that's part of the problem. Our roles are so mixed now that you're not allowed to be a man. You have to be a certain way to be a female. You have to be seen as strong and hard and all of these things. And that's kind of part of the problem. So he's, had this passion project, his first major motion picture. He's put all this work into it, all this thought about it, about what it wants to look like. And they brought Blake Lively on as an actress, well-known Hollywood actress, very powerful husband in the form of Ryan Reynolds, very powerful best friend in the form of Taylor Swift, who's been dragged into it in the last couple of days. I had thought she had been suspiciously quiet since she'd been very good friends. She's very good friends with Blake Lively, but it turns out she's got like a minor bit role in this situation. So anyway, what's kind of happened is that as time's gone on in the production of this movie, it would seem like boundaries have been overstepped in one way or another. Um, she came on, they gave her the kind of vanity title of producer, as they do with many actors and directors these days. And she's gradually kind of overstepped in the forms of taking over wardrobe, script writing, um, visual effects, I think, intimacy coordination, just basically every aspect, and pulled her husband into it as well. And I think kind of part of the problem is that Justin Baldoni, in early days, sorry if I'm not pronouncing his name right, but I think he's been very aware of how powerful her connections is. So he's as a kind of a newbie at this level, he's been very careful about not shutting things down, and he's kind of probably allowed her too much freedom in that sense, particularly when it came to a costume and things like that. It seems to have been, because what seems to have happened is when dailies have gone back to the studio or whatever it is they do, it's been like, what the hell is she wearing? And that's fed back to him, who's a bristled kind of thing, and thought, how do I tackle this with her? She's so passionate about, because she's like basically using her own clothes, her own ideas. She's overruling the costume designer, all of this kind of thing. So I think along the way there's had to be like lots of conversations, and I think he's kowtowed quite a lot just in the name of keeping the peace and keeping the production going. Because from what his lawsuit is now saying, that she was kind of often saying, if you don't do XYZ, I won't promote this, I won't do this, I won't do that. So he's had to time and time again, and him as what seems to be, I'm saying seems because of what he's been accused of, he seems to be like a guy that kind of goes with the flow, is keen to see women being elevated, doesn't want to shut women down. recognizes she maybe has more power than him, and he's like given away a lot. He's allowed his boundaries to be crossed time and time again, is what it feels like, in order to keep this production moving. And he might also have seen that in some ways, if he allowed a lot of this, it might make it a bigger movie, a bigger deal, and he might have sacrificed a lot in the terms of what it might mean for his next project, maybe that, and also the fact of, if he crossed these people, where did he go from here? And the problem is, Blake Lively seems to have had the ear of the movie production company Sony as well. Sony is not looking so good these days. It doesn't know how to do good superhero movies, and seems to have made a vast cock up of this situation as well. So whatever has gone along here, it was I'm cutting forward a bit and then I'll reverse a bit. But what seems to have happened is that when it comes to promoting the movie, we've kind of had the first inkling as the public of things being wrong, because A, they weren't pictured together at all, or interviewed together at all, Justin and Blake. So it was very evident what's the problem here. So people went looking for what the issue was. And there was also this issue of, she was promoting this romantic but domestic violence, or DV, as you keep calling it, because I think it probably triggers maybe Facebook or YouTube to shut you down if you actually mention violence. But he's promoted it as being about that, and about elevating women and supporting women with these stories of DV. And she's been all about, oh no, it's just about empowerment. It's about what else it is about you. It's about wearing your floral clothes. It's about everything that's available to you. And she's really promoted it as a romantic, almost comedy, which of course hasn't sat very well with people who loved that book. I haven't read it. People who loved that book and resonated with it as victims or survivors of DV. For her to come along and it's like, grab your friends, wear your florals and go off to see it as if you're going to have like a fun evening, when actually there's not too much comedy as far as I'm aware in it. It is more about, she falls for this guy and very quickly realises that there's this side to him. And it actually reflects, from what I know of, I think she's been brought up in an abusive household, so there's all of that involved. So he's been promoting it as one thing, she's been promoting it as another. So people have gone and looked for, where's this trouble coming from? So every negative thing from the past about hers, because there's more about her than there is about him probably, has been trawled through. And then this reporter came forward and said, look, here's this interview from when she kind of really humiliated me, made me question whether I even wanted to do this job. And it's Blake Lively and a co-star of hers, Parker Posey, being interviewed for this Woody Allen movie, where quite quickly this reporter is shut down and frozen out of her own interview. She says one wrong thing in Blake Lively's interpretation. She compliments, says congratulations on your little bump, and straight away that has offended Blake Lively, and she's literally cut the reporter out of the rest of the interview. And then, like, every rumour from the past about Blake Lively has come forward during the promotion of this movie. All of the kind of past misspoken things, or things that were evidently said flippantly, and the way she's continued to promote the movie has all been very off key with what it's actually about. And she's said some really kind of flippant things like a husband would, but in terms of what the movie's related to, it's really not sat well with the people, especially when the director, the male, is talking all about DV and about women and about survivors and blah 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 blah. And it's also not helped that she's promoted her drink line, her alcohol line, and her new hair care line during this as well, to the extent of having cocktails at the premiere that were using names of the characters, and one of them used the character of the abusive man in the thing. So it's all gone a bit tone deaf during the promotion of this movie. And then just before Christmas, just a few days before Christmas, which the timing is a bit odd. I mean, I'm not really sure why you would choose this timing when you've got a family. Now, I'm thinking of Blake Lively's family, and I was thinking, why would you want to drop that lawsuit or that threat of a lawsuit a few days before Christmas and know that's going to be hanging all over your Christmas. It would just seemed really, really off. And I'm trying not to pick sides here because we don't know all of the story or all of the details. We know plenty at this point. So she's filed this thing and accused him of sexual harassment. So, of course, there's been a big palaver. And, you know, instantly it went from, for a short period, it went from criticising her to suddenly everybody's jumped on her side for a period of time, automatically bought it all, as we do. We just buy these things. You know, we just take it verbatim, don't we? Especially with all the Harvey Weinstein stuff in the past and the, you know, what's he called? Brian Epstein. Is it Brian Epstein? In the, you know, all of those things in the past and the Me Too movement, we've automatically gone to instantly believe the woman. The woman says she's sexually harassed, we must believe the woman, otherwise we're seen to be XYZ away. So that's happened. And so everybody kind of swung back to her point of view, and it was like Paul Blake and all the rest of it. And then it's like, obviously, you're waiting to see what he's going to say. And his lawyer comes out and says this. As well as that, there was a piece written in the New York Times, I believe, that they use all of her point of view, only gave him like warning of it a few hours before it was due to go live. And actually, it was late at night when they gave him the warning, and it was due to go live in the early, you know, first thing in the morning. And actually, it went live a few hours before they even said it would. So he had no time to interject his opinion on things before this New York Times article in support of her point of view went live. So there was this whole palaver about it. So my feeling now, I don't know what quite, I would never instantly dismiss somebody saying sexual harassment. It needs investigation, does that side of things. But now it feels like to me like he's taken and taken and taken and put up with it and all of these things as far as he can. And it's come down to now where he's actually being accused of sexual harassment, and he's basically been forced into a situation where he has to fight for himself, or he's going to lose everything that he has. He's going to lose his whole livelihood and his reputation, his work, everything. So she's pushed him in. So he's been pushed into this position. So he has now come out and he's suing literally everybody. He's suing Blake Lively, he's suing the husband, he's suing the New York Times. And he has starting to produce all of his evidence, which is not just the text messages that were and bits and pieces that were taken from her point of view. It's all of the context around those clippets and snippets that she's provided in her suit and the New York Times article. So now it's like everything is coming out. And what it's starting to seem like is that there was a slow campaign of her taking over his movie, of overstepping and overstepping and overstepping. And it seems like is what I'm saying, because we're still kind of finding out that it seems like she's used a lot of her husband's clout. It seems like he was brought over to discuss this specific scene on a rooftop that is a pivotal scene in the movie. And her husband was there, she was there, and whether it's been a setup or not, Taylor Swift has knocked on the door, come in and given her two penneth worth on saying, oh yeah, I really like how Blake's point of view is on this scene, I think you should go with Blake's blah blah blah. And he's tried to be very neutral and say, oh well, I'll certainly consider it, I like the ideas, it'll probably be a blend of the two things in the, you know, it seems like he's tried to keep it very neutral and give himself some space. But then there's like a whole slew of things that have come afterwards in text messages and stuff where it does seem like she's consistently making veiled threats about this happens or else I. And part of it is this thing of she's actually called herself Khaleesi in one text message, which if you know your Game of Thrones, it's like, I'm not really sure you want to be Khaleesi when it all comes down to it, but basically a very powerful woman who had dragons at her command. She was kind of demented, the root product of incest and all kinds of things. So it's, yeah, she's a powerful woman, but I'm not sure you'd necessarily want to classify yourself as Khaleesi these days. But anyway, she's basically said, yeah, I'm Khaleesi and I have these dragons, my beautiful or lovely dragons at my command. And basically she's calling Ryan Reynolds and Taylor Swift her dragons. And so for people that go along with us, it's fine and it usually works out wonderfully, but and left that it seems like she's left that hanging for him to interpret that as he will. So what's gone on is that bit by bit she got control of this film, and she ended up getting herself into the editing suite. You know, she was an actress basically with a vanity title of being a producer, and she got her own cut of the movie. She basically edged out the director's own editors, made her own cut, even though his cut tested better with test audiences. She has then enforced her version being the one that went out to be seen in cinemas. So there's been a lot of clout being bandied about. So now it's this question of who do you believe and what happened here? Was the sexual harassment? But from what we're seeing at the moment, at this present moment in time, it seems like she kind of volunteered her exposure to certain things. She didn't have a problem with it at the time. But when it seemed like things were going downhill, there's been a pivotal moment where I think there must have been a break due to the writer's strike or something. And she's come up with this like statement where he has to agree to this, and this in order for her to come back to work. And it has mentioned things that could be deemed as sexual harassment. And kind of what his side is saying is that he looked at all of this, and you could definitely see it's been shown that there's definitely two sides to this argument. One that could be taken as sexual harassment, and one that could be taken as she kind of went along with this, and she actually invited people in when she was in a physically vulnerable state and didn't have a problem with it at the time, blah, blah, blah. But in order to get his movie going forward, what he's saying now is that he agreed to that in order just so that they could keep going. That if that was what it took to get her back to work, and by this time he's probably taken quite a lot on the chin. So I'm trying to keep an open mind about it all, but it brings into mind so much stuff, really, about how we make snap judgments based on the stories that we hear, and the next day we can believe a totally different story and go totally the other way. It also brings into focus this idea of, do we need men to be feminists? And what does it mean to be a feminist? Is it really a healthy thing to be a feminist these days? Because if feminist means you have to be strong and you have to be a bully and you have to walk all over men and you have to always have your own way, otherwise you say it's your needs not being met or your boundaries are being crossed or whatever it is that a good thing to be a feminist? And do we really want men identifying as feminists? If it means that it weakens men, if it means that women always get their own way and that women are always right. I could have a ton of people coming down on me like a ton of bricks for this. But my thinking about the relationships between men and women is that it's like you want a man to be a man. And I don't want a man to be a feminist. All you really want from a man is for him to care for you, respect you, listen to you, treat you well, basically. You don't really want him to identify as a feminist because you're already as a woman. You don't need a man in your life to be a feminist, I don't think. That's my opinion. It's like me now. I'm a single lady of a certain age, and a couple of times in the past I've had spells of dating, but I've always struggled because I've been single most of my life and had to deal with everything on my own. I've had to become very strong. I haven't wanted to. I've had no choice to in lots of ways because everything's been on my shoulders. Nobody to turn to, decisions all on me, financial, business, whatever it is, So you get very strong whether you like it or not. And I know a lot of women in this scenario. So you don't really want a man coming along who doesn't know how to be a man, basically, who doesn't quite know what it means to be a man because he's listened to so much stuff about what he shouldn't do around a woman that he doesn't really know how to conduct himself around a woman anymore. So I've had like a few men where it's like I've just felt like the mother or the one that had to make all the decisions, or that it was all on me and it was my way, and what do you want? And it just gets so exhausting, because the thing is, when you've been like me and you've been single a lot and you've had to be strong, you get to a point where if you're going to have somebody in your life, you want them to take some weight off your shoulders. You want them to help you out emotionally, help you make decisions, take the responsibility for decisions off your shoulders, even in terms of just where you're going to eat, where do you think we should go for a holiday, whatever it is. You don't want to be you don't want to have to mother the man in your life. And I feel a bit like with him and this movie, this Justin, him trying so hard to see it through the female gaze and be a feminist means he's allowed a woman with a lot of power and a lot of influence. It's not really her own, it belongs to the people around her, to come in and trample all over him. And he's not tried to maintain his boundaries really, or he's been walking this like crazy paving, hoping it doesn't open up beneath his feet, basically, in order to try and get this movie forward. I'm going to leave the sexual harassment thing open because you want to see all the proof when it comes to that. And I think the problem for her is that a lot of these instances she's mentioned, there's actual evidence on camera that he has, like the outtakes or whatever you want, where you can see that she's instigating a lot of things, because she's accused him of things like instigating kisses being longer or kisses that weren't planned, but from what the evidence is saying so far, from what I've heard, is that he has on camera evidence where she's the one seemed to be doing that, where she's the one constantly breaking character and making it personal rather than the interaction between the characters. So that's all to be turned over and analysed, and the rest of it, whether it'll ever come to court. But he's basically now seems to have been pushed so far that he's basically suing Blake and Ryan, the husband and wife, for their entire combined income of $400 million, which of course he won't get. But he's basically saying, you've tried to ruin my whole life with this. You've trampled all over me for so long. Right, fine. You've pushed me as far as I can go. No more Mr. Nice Guy. I want your entire livelihood. I want my reputation back. And you've pushed me to this. This is what it feels like at this point. Because basically Blake has said, my way or the highway. And I think a lot of that is, from what I can tell of what her background and the things I've read and the things I've seen, is that she seems to have been brought up as somebody that's not really known hardship. She's not known being without things. She confessed quite early some time ago that she got onto this. I think she was in the school that Glee was based on, the TV show, so like a performing arts school, and she got on this show choir, even though she couldn't sing and she couldn't dance. And what she said was, quite honestly, was that her parents had paid to get her on this choir. So I think that's the kind of background she's come from. So she's always got the things she needed. She's never done without or had to really fight for something. And when you do that to children, you don't really build the self-esteem properly, because they've never had to cope with not getting the thing. So they're always kind of not very secure in the world, because they always need somebody to be facilitating them getting their needs. And kind of what she seems to have intimated in some of these text messages is that in the past there have been times where her needs weren't met, or her opinion wasn't listened to, but now she has these powerful people and people will now listen to her point of view. So I think she somehow has reached a point with this situation that's been going on with the movie where she's like, right, now I get to have all my own way. And because she's got a bit of power, then she's asked for more power and more power and more power. Meanwhile, he's so busy trying to be a feminist. That is my take on it. Some of the sexual harassment stuff, it's like she's saying he came into her trailer when she was pumping breast milk because she'd not long had a baby. And he's saying, yeah, but here's the text where she's inviting me to come. At that moment, I said I can leave it a bit if you like, and like she's really taken offence at him asking his trainer to ask her trainer, I think that's how it went, what she weighs, because he has like long-standing back issues, and there's this scene where he has to pick her up. So to do it safely, he needs to kind of figure out how he's going to do that. But she's immediately taken that as in fat shaming her. So I don't know if she also has some kind of sensitivities about her body, because whenever she's pregnant, even after she's publicly announced it, you're also not supposed to comment on the fact that she's pregnant or congratulate her or anything like that. So she's really touchy around what's said to her, or people intimating that they can kind of have somehow some empathetic connection with her or resonance with her or something like that. She gets very defensive, and she also responds with that really flippant humor as well. That kind, you see, I also think this case highlights this idea of humor as a life strategy, where people's entire personality is joke, 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 banter, 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 banter. And I absolutely hate this word banter and this excuse banter, because banter to me is an excuse to say the mean things that you really, really think and feel, and then pass it off as having a bit of fun. That to me is banter, and a lot of people won't like that either. People might jump on me for that, but I think that's the problem here. Is she kind of has just said whatever she likes at any point and tried to pass it off as humour, and that doesn't always sit well with people either. But there's a whole palaver around it, because like initially the whole cast and everything were whatever has been said behind the scenes, the whole cast had pulled away from the director Justin and onto Blake's side, and they've all gone quiet right now. They're not really saying anything, because I guess there's that thing of maybe they only know her point of view, and she's also a powerful person with powerful backing, and they're trying to gauge which way they fall into this, because obviously they have their own careers to protect. But it threatens to take down so much, this whole palaver, like the Me Too movement, what it means to be a feminist, what it means to be a woman with power. There's so much kind of riding on it now at this point. And I mean, Taylor Swift's parents and business team must be absolutely fuming right now. I mean, if you know me, I'm a bit of a fan of Taylor. And I kind of was waiting on this, because I'm thinking, where's Taylor Swift in all this? Because I thought this is going to be tricky for her, before I even knew that she had some kind of context in the thing. Now, whether Taylor has just bought hook, line and sinker from Blake Lively in the past, that she's this poor little thing whose opinions aren't heard often enough, or whatever it is, or she's just done that thing that we all do of being too blinkered when it comes to a friend, and just buying whatever they say or giving them whatever they need, and getting all righteous about it. There might have been an element of that, but her knocking on the door at the time this meeting's going on to discuss this pivotal script that Blake wants a certain way, and also has her husband rewrite, which is kind of crazy. In what world do you have an actress who's rewriting the script as they go, and then having her husband rewrite certain key things too? And there's also a question mark, because the writers' strike was going on at this time, so it's really, should anybody have been writing at this point in time, when writing wasn't permitted, basically. But yeah, so from Taylor Swift's point of view, she, if it does go as far as court, she might even have to be deposed or dragged into it. But she might not know the extent, how much has Blake used her, really? How much is it a true friendship, or Blake spotting a person with power and drawing her into her fold? I googled today how long they've been friends, and apparently it's since about 2015. But I mean, Taylor's even mentioned her Blake's children in some of her songs, so it's a whole controversy. So for me, I'm just looking at it all as a therapist and a student of human emotions, if you like, and the messes that we get ourselves into, and finding it all really interesting. And I know I'm spending way too much time dwelling in it, and kind of trying. It's been an interesting thing from a perspective of me working on keeping an open mind and trying to see all the points of view. I don't particularly resonate, never have kind of gelled with Blake Lively. But when you hear sexual harassment, you think, well, yeah, I have to keep my mind open. But we also have to question this thing now, just automatically believing the woman because of the fear of Me Too and all of this thing. And I think we really have to examine masculine and feminine roles and what we've lost as a society by not allowing men to be men anymore. Because I came across a really good thing by Teal Swan some time ago, and it talks about what it means to be a man in a relationship. And as a man, you kind of, it resonated with me. It might not resonate with you, but the idea of the man in the relationship as the container, the safe harbour, if you like, that lets people know where they are and that they're safe and that they're anchored. And then from the feminine or the women's perspective, then you can flourish. You're free because you feel safe. You can get on with being a wife, being a mother, throwing all your love into your children, and having that support at your back. So when men get too much about, I don't know how to be around a woman, I don't know if I can put a hand to a woman's back anymore, I don't know if I'm allowed to open a door for a woman anymore, I don't know if I can tell a woman when she's overstepping anymore, I don't know if I can even vent my feelings anymore, because it's all about the woman's always right. And it does a total disservice to women too. You know, because then you get women come along who are being praised for being really hard, really aggressive, really bulldozing, not necessarily Blake Lively, other people too. And we're praising that as being great women. But is it really? Um, so to me, this whole thing and how he's handled it, and because I kind of find him a bit, I think he is a genuine person from from the things that I've seen, but it's kind of cringy. This, you know, and I think that's kind of rattled her a bit. I think she, I mean, I haven't even covered the whole thing of. There's an element now of in the movie Deadpool and Wolverine that was filming at the time that the whole It Ends With Us palaver was going on, that it now seems like Ryan Reynolds has used this character of Nice Pool in his movie Deadpool to ridicule Justin Baldoni over and over and over again, picking on his looks in a way. And she's also been shown to be body shamed. You know, she claims to be body shamed over her own weight, whereas she's also now, I think it's on audio, her criticising his nose and he should get plastic surgery and stuff. So in Deadpool and Wolverine, there's now all this focus on the character Nice Pool, and is this actually Justin Baldoni in, you know? And there's also like even how they've credited Nice Pool as being played by Gordon Reynolds at the end of the movie Deadpool and Wolverine, and also thanked Gordon Reynolds, who is a fictional person who's really Ryan Reynolds, thanked him in the credits of It Ends With Us, which, as you remember, is her edit on the movie that should have been Justin Baldoni's. So it's like, is Nice Paul just more digs at him because he's come across as too nice, too easygoing, too interested in what it means to be a woman, when he should have really been more focused on what it is to be a man and to be in charge of his project, you know, and to have his boundaries in place and to be the professional. Because a big part of this, and a lot of women won't like hearing this maybe, a big part of his role on that movie, It Ends With Us, was to make sure people know where the boundaries are and what can't be overstepped. And he's been so busy focused on the female gaze for this movie and his role as being a feminist, that he's actually he's actually facilitated her trampling all over the project. So in essence, with no rudder, no anchor, no grounding, she's run riot as a child that's been brought up to always get her own way in a way. And for when she doesn't get her own way, to make sure she has powerful friends in play that will help her get her own way. That kind of is what it's feeling like to me at this point in time. And I'm just finding it all really fascinating. How ego-minded we all are as people, that one day we can be so down on one person and the next day we're saying team hashtag the other person, you know, and it's like all the commentators online that one day are pro this point of view and the next day it's like they haven't said all those things the day before. They're suddenly, oh, I know I said that yesterday, but this is today. You know what I mean? Nobody keeps an open mind anymore. But I think it has so much to say about relationships, about what it means to be masculine, means to be feminine, boundaries, what being a good friend is now, if you like, in that Taylor Swift, you know, may actually have kind of done a friend a disservice by not really putting a foot down and saying, is it your place to be doing this though, really? You know, you know what I mean? Because they're so busy being feminists, thinking being a feminist means riding roughshod over everything. And kind of maybe using the female angle to say, yes, but we're the women and we're right because historically women were subjugated, repressed, and all of that. So, as a modern day feminist, women should always have their own way because of what went on in the past. There's kind of a little bit of an element of that too. So, I kind of sit and look at it with a little bit of dismay, really, that we're losing the lovely things of what it means to be feminine and the lovely things of what it means to be masculine. And we're also, nobody knows where they are anymore because of all this, you know. And even in terms of, I do kind of always bear in mind J.K. Rowling's perspective on things. I don't pretend to be an expert on trans or what it means to be trans or anything like that. But I do think there is an element of the trans argument that is, people don't know what it means to be a man or a woman anymore. So you come up as a child with your parents now not knowing their roles as men or women, or stepping into what it means to be that. You grow up not really, you know, growing up is hard enough as it is without knowing what it means to be a man or what it means to be a mum, a woman, you know, coming from your parents. And then you've got society saying it's okay to be anything. And that's all entirely happening even before you bring whatever childhood trauma might happen to you, or what kind of weird ideas you might get about it not being safe to be a little girl or a little boy because whatever abuse happens or whatever. So you can see how the whole trans thing is connected to this loss of the definition of our roles of being masculine and feminine anymore, because you get a kid growing up that's had enough trauma and enough confusion and doesn't feel like it's safe to be a boy or safe to be a girl, and then you've got society telling them, well, it's okay to just switch. You can see how it all gets really, really confusing. And I'm not saying that every person that, you know, chooses to be trans, that's the story for them. I'm sure that, you know, I don't know enough about it, but that is my gut feeling, that a lot of the times it's trauma related and not having guidance and not being raised in a secure way, knowing it's okay to be a man and it's okay to be a woman, and that both sides deserve to be heard, deserve to be respected, deserve to have boundaries, deserve to communicate well with each other. You know what I mean? And revel in each other's strengths, and not destroy the nice things about being a man and the nice things about being a woman, and how we complement our strengths and weaknesses, complement each other. So that is my feeling on this whole movie palaver, that there's all of this going on, and I hope people really examine it, not from the point of view of who's wrong in the end or who's right in the end, but what it says about our whole society, and also about this thing of, I think it's really important to have real conversations and not to glorify people, kind of like Ryan Reynolds, who in every interview, everything that he ever does, everything has to be a joke, a question has to always be answered with humour. That is somebody that's got trauma in the past or things that they haven't dealt with. You deal with somebody who uses sarcasm all the time about everything. Um, Somebody that can't be complimented on being pregnant because you're somehow weight shaming her or something, or having an opinion on her body, or sarcasm, humour all the time, being really touchy like that and firing back, or freezing somebody out, or saying something cutting or sarcastic. We can all do that occasionally, but when somebody's entire conversational structure is humour or that, they've got problems, they've got issues. It's not something to be glorified as, oh, he's just such a fun guy or whatever, because those people that are humour, they're probably not. It's like I always say, beware of your smiling assassins. Those the people that just literally are so sweet about everything or so funny about everything, they're the ones that you really have to watch, you know. But don't look a bit deeper is what I'm trying to say. Don't just take things at face value. Try and really keep an open mind. That's what I'm trying to do with all of this, and trying to just really look at it as an interesting study about human behaviour and what it means to be human and what really we should be doing as well, you know. So try and, if you are following all this Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni stuff, just really, really, really try and keep an open mind and look at it all as an interesting play on life and what you can learn from it, really. But right now, it seems that she's just fired back. He's got his lawsuit that he's counter launched. You know, people have gone through it and says there's some really good evidence here that, you know, it's this thing of he's really got receipts, is how they term it now, isn't it? He's really got these receipts. And she's fired back with basically saying, well, that's your classic abuser tactic, to blame the woman. That, you know, they've not like launched a counter suit to that as such. It's just like a response letter or something. But basically, it's not taking on board any of his points or any of the evidence. It's basically saying this is classic abuser behaviour to spin the narrative as onto the woman. No, the woman is the abuser, and that's not really landed very well in the press either, because she's not actually at this point in time said anything that could actually counteract his evidence. So it's all still ongoing, and it's very, very interesting, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in the end, whether it will go to court. It'll probably take years anyway, but whatever happens, it's everybody has done a disservice to themselves at this point. Nobody's coming out of it unscathed, but it will be a real shame, no matter who's right or who's wrong, if people don't do a lot of self-examination because of it. Because this is the thing with Blake Lively. What I feel like you get the sense she's not looking at any of it as to what is my part in this. That seems to be what's coming through. She's not looking at it as if to say, have I created that in any way? She's entirely doing the victim mentality. This has been done to me. And what you would really hope is that even in situations where maybe your boundaries were crossed as a woman, that it's always valuable to keep in mind, how could I have helped myself? Not to blame yourself, but to say, what can I learn from this? You know, and it doesn't seem like any, you know, it's and that's also the thing. When she's raised her initial case, she's called it harassment. Now she's come back and said that's what an abuser would do. So now she's upping the game to abuse, whereas it wasn't called abuse before. So now she's changed. She's even switching up the language to be harder. So she's clearly doesn't seem to be examining her part in anything, given what he's presented in terms of evidence. She doesn't seem at this point in time, and I say seem because we don't know, but she doesn't seem to be examining her part in the whole palaver, which is quite interesting in itself. So then there's an argument for, is there some narcissistic tendencies there? She certainly doesn't seem to be very self-aware as to how hurtful she can be. there seems to be like a bit of an emotional cut off there, which again can be trauma from the past, or being raised as a child whose parents paid the way for things basically and never taught them self-resilience or how to maintain their own self-esteem. So it's all really, really interesting. So I hope I haven't bored you to death with that, but that's my current take on it. And I wanted to talk about it in terms of having you look at all the stories that are going on within that and what it can say about us as a society. That's what I find fascinating about it. So I hope that was of interest. I will see you later.